So this is my 205 non-GTI 1.1 Peugeot that I've had for probably just about a year now. I bought for 350 quid off a guy at work with a standard 1.1 litre engine. And I put in a 1.9 litre MI16 from a 405 GTI. And on its first drive, I spun a rod bearing. So here it is. It's been sitting at work for probably four months now. Just kind of been waiting. My van blew up, so I've been fixing that instead, but I've done a few little bits to it. I've done 1.9 GTI wheels, 306 GTI 6 brakes. I don't know if you can see them in there. Bilstein tarmac rally suspension. It's got GTI fuel tank, so I can run an in-tank pump. It's got standard clocks, so I've put some gauges in it, oil pressure and water temp, which were fine. I was a satchel shifter, which is disconnected at the moment. And then these lovely seat covers. So the plan today is to pull the engine out and start tearing it down, really. It's been sitting like this for quite a long time, so most of the stuff's disconnected already. I've done like the harness, the fuel lines. The only thing left are drive shafts, and then the gearbox mount and this engine mount. I should be able to lift it up and spin it out. Alright, so I've moved it into a bit more of an accessible spot. I'm now going to jack it up, front wheels off, undo the lower arm so I can pull the drive shafts out, and then get the engine crane out. Let's take the wheels off. Right, to pull the drive shafts out, I think what I'm going to do is loosen and remove this lower arm, and then I should be able to pull the whole caliper towards me, which should bring the drive shaft out. Well, I was looking for ages to find the other lifting point. There's one. The other one is supposed to be behind the throttle body there, and I've taken it off. Oh, sorry, there. So I'm going to have to find another way or come back another day, I think. Right, so I'm going to start removing the engine mounts, and hopefully the engine doesn't drop. Got some tension on it. See it there? Alright, that's the battery tray off. And that is a gearbox mount. You know what I've forgotten? I've forgotten the dog bone mount underneath. So that'd be why it's not coming out. There is an engine. Right, now the engine's out, I'm going to put the suspension back together, the lower arm, put the lower arms in, and then I can put the wheels back on and I can roll the car out of the way. I'm going to get this painted again. I did paint this last time it was out. I put some photos up of kind of the build process before, but yeah, it's all starting to rust again. I didn't clear coat it, which was a bit stupid, so I'll get it painted again in the paint shop, and then yeah, get the engine rebuilt. The engine is out and it is now in a dry room. So I'm going to start stripping stuff apart. I do have some lights set up because it gets dark at about 4:30 now. Right, so first things first is to remove the breather system from the idle air control valve. Now I can remove the bolts and nuts holding the intake manifold on. Now I am going to take the oil filter and oil filter housing off, and that's damaged, so I'll probably end up replacing that anyway. Well, as you probably just saw, I was trying to undo this holder for the distributor cap, and it's actually turning the whole cam assembly. So I'm going to do that once the head's off to avoid damaging any valves or anything. But what you can see just below it is oil leaking. So it suggests that the O-ring, like this on the other side, has perished. So I'll need to order some of those as well. What I'd missed is this little cover that goes over the flywheel. So hopefully now it'll come off. Right, so I've got the gearbox off, which exposes the flywheel and pressure plate, which look like they've been well used, but it hasn't. It's kind of only just gone on there. It's a Pug one-off light and billet flywheel and just the normal pressure plate. So well, there's a clutch disc, brand new, but it does look a little rough, so hopefully just a little scuff up with some Scotch-Brite will get that working again. And a bit of surface rust started in the pressure plate, so hopefully same story with that. Okay, I'm back for day 2 on the MI16 teardown. I've been looking at what I've got to do next, and I think what I want to do is pull the belts off so I can take the head off and there's less to lift then to try and get it on the engine crane. Right, so the head is now off, and on initial inspection, the pistons look all right. Let's pull the head gasket off. There we are. As you can see, these are the cylinder liners. So I can check them for flatness and protrusion across the deck later. But there's no marking on the pistons. They're all equally black or brown in colour. Obviously they're undone, that's why it's moving like that. Right, looking at the bottom of the head, it seems okay. There's signs that the engine has been rebuilt before, like wear marks, as if it had been pried off previously. See them there. Apart from that, the whole coolant jacket system seems a little rusty, but that should clean up. And cylinder 3, I think this is quite black and wet compared to the other cylinders. So I might have had an injector stuck open or leaking. The head gasket looks good for the most part. There's still intact in between the cylinders. I mean, it wasn't misfiring, so it's kind of what I expected. There's a little blowout by the coolant jacket that's rusted. So I don't know what caused that. Maybe it was just me pulling it off. But it does look like it's had either excess pressure but apart from that, looks okay. Okay, I've just been to Tool Station. I picked up some M10 by 100 bolts because I didn't have anything that would work. So all the holes are open-ended, so hopefully it doesn't matter that they're a bit long. But we'll wind some in. What I'm going to do now is flip the engine over, remove the sump, which I think only has a couple bolts in it, and get on removing the pistons. Right, you can see in the sump at the bottom all the metal flakes, and that's from that bearing that gave up. So this is going to need a large clean, and so is all the oil passageways in the engine, just to make sure that it's not all blocked up when it goes back together. Now I want to remove the spacer plate that goes underneath the sump, and that's what I believe that's what the difference is between a 1.6 and a 1.9, is that it's a stroked engine. So to create the extra room in the crank, you have a spacer plate, so I'm going to try and take that off now. So when I was diagnosing what was wrong with the engine, I had actually pulled the sump off and the oil pump, which normally sits here, and I've undone all the rod caps. So without having to undo them, I should be able to just push them out. Okay, well I didn't expect that. The whole liner has actually come out with the piston still inside it. So I don't know if that's meant to happen or not. I haven't worked on an engine with liners before, so I'll have to see what to do about that. There's 4. There's a lot of build up on that. I don't know what that is. Just going to quickly pull off this dog bone mount and drive shaft mount. That went well. And now I'm going to remove the main caps and hopefully be able to pull the crank. I still have to undo the main pulley, but I was hoping I'll be able to do that later. I'm going to try and do the same trick I did on the van, which is wedge the crank with my bendy hammer. Alright, this is not the right way of doing it. Hopefully I don't cause any damage, but let's have a go. There it goes. That's lucky. Right, you might be able to see in there that it's keywayed. So I don't have to worry about putting this back on the right way around because there's a keyway slot. Hopefully there's a key in there. If there's not, then I'm gonna have to work out how to time it back up later, but I'm gonna try and knock it off and then I'll be able to pull these bolts out, the front main seal, and then fully undo the mains, rear main seal off, and hopefully the crank will lift right up. Now I'm going to whiz off this front main seal, or 11mm bolts. There we are. That's the front main seal. And that's the oil pump chain and the sprocket for it, which is what I'm going to be changing, I believe, to increase oil pressure in the future. So on reassembly, I think I'm going to put a different gear on. Now I want to do the same for the rear main seal. So I'm going to pull number 1 main cap off, which looks like it's part of the rear main seal. And that is the wrong size socket. There we are. So that is the number 5, I believe, main cap. And as you can see, it's got the housing inside it, the rear main seal, which is there. Right, so there is number 1, 2, and that's got some thrust bearings, thrust washers as well, so I need to make sure that they go back in. number 4, and that doesn't have any thrust washers on it. So there's a slight bit of uneven wear on the side, if you can see that. But I'll go through them all later. So our number 3, the middle one, actually has 2 bolts going through the side of the block, and it's actually studs and nuts compared to the bolts on the other side. So I'm just going to pull those out, looks like a 13, and then hopefully I can pry this cap up and then the crank will be free. There we are. There's number 3. Immediately I noticed damage on the corners of the cap, like it's been pried to get in there or out. And there's some of that bearing material there, look. So I definitely think this engine has been apart at some point, and that's probably why it blew up on its first drive. So there we are. And I think what I can do now is pull the crank out. Right, so now the crank's out, I can have a look at the other side of the main bearings, which look good for the most part. There's some uneven wear on this one as well. You can see by the shininess on one side. But on the most part, they look okay. I have just noticed there's a little rubber seal on the side of the number 1 main cap on both sides. And on the main cap, you see it's in there, and it has a little bit of RTV on it, so I need to order some replacements just to avoid it leaking onto my clutch. And what I've also seen, which is not such good news, is the damage on the main journal where the cap bolts down. So I don't know how that's happened. Maybe it's the wrong cap, or maybe, I mean, the middle ones weren't very tight. I don't know if you saw in the video. Watching it back, it actually looks like they've left the 2 13mm bolts in through the cap, and they've just pried it with a screwdriver. So someone's absolutely mullered those. And also, somehow, there's damage on that rib, reinforcing rib, and on that one. So it's not looking very great, to be honest. Damage again on number 5. It looks like someone's had a screwdriver in there. So I don't really know what to do now. I'll have to assess if that's going to be worth rebuilding, or if I find a replacement block. I can't imagine this is the end of the world, but I'll have to work out what to do. Okay, so I'm going to remove the water pump. Hopefully keep the gasket in one piece. That's the wrong size socket as well. I forget they're all 11s on this thing. And there's the inside of the water pump, which has had some corrosion. Ugh. That's a bit disgusting. So maybe I'll replace that. It is metal impeller already, so it's probably okay. Given the bearings are alright, but I might replace it, we'll see. Inside, not much to see, to be honest. That's the coolant jacket all the way around the outside. And those are, I suppose, the cylinders where the liners sit. It's a bit of corrosion where the liners bolt on. Apart from that, it looks okay. But we'll see. I'll have to now pull the pistons out of the liners, have a little tidy up first, move this out of the way, and then see what I need to do next. Okay, so looking over the crank, it seems pretty good for the most part. I've just pulled that sprocket off. That was what that other keyway was for. And you see that's the spun bearing. Don't know if the lighting's any good. It's not actually that terrible. So hopefully just the smallest regrind will bring that back nice and smooth. The mains for the most part are good. Some very, very light scoring, so maybe they could just do with a polish. I'll see what the machine shop thinks, because they will definitely have seen more of these than I have. And then that's the piston. That looks alright for the most part. I don't see any significant wear on the skirt or the rings. They'll move freely. I'll have to measure them, make sure the gapping is correct, clean off all the carbon. Yeah, so far so good. Inside of the liner also looks okay. There's still a little bit of cross hatching, but there's some, see if you can see it in that one, some up and down scoring as well, so they'll need a hone. This is the one with all the build up on it. See all that build up on the side. It's flaking off everywhere. Okay, so the whole engine's now stripped apart. Got everything laid out, and I think what I need to do now is go and do some research. See what damage is allowed, see how much it's going to be to get this reground, or if I should replace it. Work out if I need new liners or not, based on the fact that they kind of just fell out. I don't know if they're meant to do that or not. And then decide if I want to strip the head and lap the valves, just because there's a bit of build up behind the valves. So I might take the valves out and lap them. I also need to see if I want to put some more aggressive cams in it, and small bits like that. I just need to work out what to do first. So I think what I'm going to do is leave the video here, and I'll come back with new parts, reassemble, reinstall it in the car, and then hopefully get it driving in the next video.